the Missing Manuscript Salon. The first thing we're going to talk about is publishing.
The fact that everybody wants the same thing, just a little different. The biggest impact you can make, as you all know, is by being legitimately different. But it means at the front end, it is much, much harder to get in because they don't see you as being like the other thing.
What is the success that you need out of the book? Because for us, we were in a little bit of different situation because we had this prominent company. We were already visible people, so it wasn't difficult for us to find a publisher that was interested in telling our story. For us, the particular stage in our company, we're looking at who will ultimately buy our company in the future. And so I wanted the gold standard of business approval. Yes, we could have chosen a partner and maybe made a big advance or had more visibility in the commercial realm, but that was less important to us.
One thing that I observed when I finally became an author myself, not being the strategist behind the author or the celebrity or the brand, I was like, what is this madness? I said, but I appreciated the structure of it. I appreciated the fact checking and I appreciated the gravitas that I wanted to be seen as.
This perception that ambition or success has to be at the cost of something. You have to sacrifice your relationships, your well-being, your health, perhaps.
Yeah. I'm a very ambitious person, but that ambition was expensive. It cost me my health, autoimmune diseases, and my doctor called me one day to be like, hey, you're literally days away from organ failure. You have to get your shit together. Traditional publishers really ask you to hurt yourself to get to the goal.
Thank you, Jen, for having me.
Thanks for saying yes.
This is such a joy. Everything Jen asks you to do, the answer is yes. Automatically. And I'm particularly thrilled to be here with these exceptional authors. I knew Amina before, but I'm so thrilled Dorie and Dr. Brent have gotten to know you and to be with all of you today. What we're going to do today is I'm going to introduce these incredible authors, and then we are going to get into this conversation. We're going to start sort of laying the landscape of where we are and what we see. And then I think we're going to go into a conversation about change and what we can do about it so that we don't just see the problem, but we see and can be part of the solution. So let me start by introducing these incredible authors. So Amina AlTai is a leadership coach, public speaker, and author of The Ambition Trap from Penguin Life. She's known for her integrative approach to leadership, blending business strategy, mindset, and wellness to help women and marginalized leaders redefine ambition on their own terms. Her work empowers others to lead with alignment, not exhaustion. I could use some of that. Next, Dr. Brent Ridge. Dr. Brent Ridge is the co-founder of Beekman 1802. If you don't know about it, you definitely should check it out. A company that built a multi-million-dollar brand around kindness and community. He is also the co-author of Goat Wisdom, published by Harvard Business Review Press. Before Beekman 1802, Brent served as a VP at Martha Stewart Omni Media and was a faculty member at Mount Sinai School of Medicine. His work champions empathy as both a human and business superpower. I can't wait to hear your thoughts. Dorie Clark is a 3-time Thinkers 50 honoree and best-selling author of The Long Game, published by Harvard Business Review Press.
Long game. We talked a lot about that today. Okay.
She's a professor at Duke University's Fuqua School of Business and recognized globally for helping leaders make their ideas heard in a crowded world. Dorie's work teaches us that lasting impact isn't built overnight. It's earned through patience, purpose, and strategy. And last, but certainly, the one who needs no introduction, but I will introduce her anyway.
It's weird to be in this seat. Thank you.
Jen Kem is a brand futurist. I actually love that description. It's a brand futurist, investor, and founder of the Thought Leadership Collective. She's the CEO of Master Brand Institute and author of Unicorn, the 9 leadership types you need to launch your big ideas with speed and success, published by Penguin Hay House. Through her work, Jen champions strategic humanity. I've experienced it myself. It's a thrill. Showing companies how to blend human leadership with innovation in the AI area. How wonderful. I'm thrilled to have this conversation with all of you. So Jen mentioned the Missing Manuscript Salon. So the first thing we're going to talk about is publishing. Because of your introduction that ideas in books are important and they form the canon. Ideas out in the world are what influence people to make choices and decisions. And putting ideas out in the world through publishing is a very powerful way. And so when we talk about the Missing Manuscript, we are talking about the ideas that never see the light of day and why. We all kind of know a little bit why, but I'd like to dig in a little bit deeper in your experiences of the why. And I'm going to tell a quick story, and then I'm going to really give the floor to these four. I'll never forget, I was at a women's conference, and it was about business and about supporting other people in business and women's. And one incredibly successful founder who had taken her company public, who was a major success, told the story of her startup and going to VCs and going to 200 VCs, almost all of whom were led by white men. And her business was an innovative fashion technology business. And the guy said, "You're really smart. And this is interesting, but I don't get it. I don't get it." And it was not because the idea wasn't good. It was because the people in charge didn't get it. They didn't understand. They didn't have her life experience, and they didn't understand the problem. So I'm going to ask you all to give us your version of what you've seen in the world of publishing or otherwise, where you've seen something you get deeply that hasn't been gotten or understood. Does anyone have a story of when they've gone out and sort of said, "Here's my idea," and someone's like, "Oh,
I have a story. So I just published my book in May of this year, so May 2025. But I was working on my book for the first time in 2019, and I was working with an agent for a year on this idea, like really like cementing it and going so deep into it. And then fast forward to March of 2020, the first month of the pandemic, and I get a call from this agent after working together for a year, and she was like, "I cannot take a risk on a new author," and like we parted ways there. And I remember just like I was standing outside of a pizza shop in Brooklyn with my mask on, just like ugly crying in the street, being like, "Why is this happening?" But then I had this moment where I was like, you know what, the work is still becoming. I think the essence of it is there, but the work is still becoming. And then fast forward through the pandemic, I ended up having a really transformative experience where I ended up working with a handful of celebrity girl bosses who were canceled, and it sort of shored up the foundation of my ambition framework. Like it was already there, but it took it to another level. And my agent just got me. Like where instantly she was like, "I understand you, I understand this work, I understand who you speak to and who needs this." And then literally like we took my book to market and we sold it in the first week. And I feel like this is such an important story because when people don't get it, they really don't get it. And we can make ourselves the problem. And I spent such a long time like mining that experience and making myself the problem. And then when somebody gets you and gets it is just like such a different experience. So I don't know if I answered the question.
You
but
did.
it
So
felt
you
relevant.
did. Thank you. So if anyone else has a story or just an insight on the way that publishing is set up, what makes it difficult for voices that have different perspectives to be heard, or different people to be heard.
I'd like to jump in because I love that you shared the story of the fashion innovator going to the VCs and getting rejected. But one thing that I observed when I finally became an author myself, you guys know this, instead of just not being the strategist behind the author or the celebrity or the brand, I was like, what is this madness? Not only were they not unicorns, they were not even donkeys, they were dinosaurs, right? And I said, but I appreciated the structure of it. I appreciated the fact checking, and I appreciated the gravitas that I wanted to be seen as. I never really was attracted to self-publishing for that reason, because anything I do, I want to do well. I want to create, because when you're working in your craft, it's a craft. To become a master, you have to be an apprentice first, and you have to keep showing up at the wheel and throwing clay and see what comes up. Well, anyway, when I got out of it, and I'm still a little hungover from my book launch in February, just to be clear, I still have like trauma. And I don't regret it, and I want to do it again. Maybe I'm sick, I don't know, but it's because I also have this clarity that if we have to fight that hard for me to get what I wanted, it built a resilience in me that allowed me to see, actually, this is a problem we need to solve because of what I've opened up with. And I realized that the biggest problem with publishing is not just that they're a dinosaur, but they're actually a venture capital firm. And you have to look at publishing like a VC. You don't think of them as a VC, you just think of them as an old institution. But actually, now more than ever, because they have to stay in business, they pick one or two unicorns they're going to bring to market, and they're going to put all their force behind it. And so you have to learn how to be an advocate for yourself. You have to learn how to strategize, help them see the vision, keep enrolling them, even when they're like, we don't get it, we don't get it, we don't get it. And I was talking about some of the concessions that I even made with my book, that I originally wanted my tagline to be how to rally the right people around your next big idea and change the world together. That was the original tagline. I think it's good. I felt it was activating. And they were like, people aren't going to get that. I'm like, really? They didn't like that I was going to use the word rally because of the Trump administration. Isn't that? And I was like, this is thoughtless. It's something that we're assigning a word. That annoys me. So again, sometimes you have to go, oh, I just see what's happening and take a step back instead of, even though I felt personal, I was crying, I was ugly crying, I was doing all the things, but it's also like, oh, now I'm pissed off. And I want for my next book that they're going to see me as a unicorn. They want to bet on me, but I have to still do my best work. I also bring my best thoughts. I'm not going to be a gatekeeper on what I know. And it all came together. But the journey, anything you really want in life, you have to learn how to advocate for yourself. And that's the piece I think in publishing people, because they think they've arrived once you got the book deal. Oh my goodness. That's just the beginning. Am I right? So you have to go in knowing what you actually want out of it. Is it gravitas? Like even your publisher, your dreamy publisher, who are you? I feel like you should be talking to your agents about. And I realized that after, like I said, I thought, oh, for sure, I have this platform. I have 400,000 email lists. I'm going to sell more books than I promised I would. And they still were like, sure, yeah, okay. By the way, Mel Robbins, she launched a week before me. I can't compete. The VC is all in on her, which totally makes sense. But I didn't even realize I don't want to be in that tailwind. That's not good for me. So now I know I will never be. Who's on your docket for the next 2 years? So I know when I want to pick my pub date. Even those questions, people don't know that you can negotiate up front. You got to do it first before you actually know, so that we can take the barriers down. So anyway, sorry. That was like those were many stories, but again, in trauma still a little bit.
I think it was so smart what you said about choosing what is the success that you need out of the book.
Yes.
Because for us, we were in a little bit different situation because we had this prominent company. We were already visible people. So it wasn't difficult for us to find a publisher that was interested in telling our story. But a lot of the publishers we talked to were interested in either memoir type storytelling where we talked about the struggle to build the business in a very memoir type setting, or they wanted something that was very inspirational, and which is fine. Those are both great categories of books. But for us, at the particular stage in our company, we're looking at who will ultimately buy our company in the future. And so I wanted the kind of the gold standard of business book approval. And so, yes, we could have chosen a partner and maybe made a big advance or had more visibility in the commercial realm, but that was less important to us. I wanted Harvard Business Review to have our book because I knew that they were going to speak to a very specific audience, and for all of the potential acquirers of our company in the future, that was going to have much more importance than any millions of books.
Do you see that forward thinking that we were talking about earlier today? And we were talking, just connecting to that. It's so exciting for me. I'm just yeah. Just they don't even know. I didn't even set them up to know they weren't there. So thank you for that.
That's great. I guess I should weigh in too. And it's interesting that you talk about the different things that the publishers wanted out of the book. My story is kind of about the fact that everybody wants the same thing, just a little different. And what I've discovered over time is that the biggest impact you can make, as you all know, is by being legitimately different. But it means at the front end, it is much, much harder to get in because they don't see you as being like the other thing. It doesn't fit their schema.
Yes.
And so you have to work pretty hard at the front end to navigate your way in. Once you do, that difference and that individuation is the thing that actually makes you more successful than the copycat. And in my book, my first book, Reinventing You, I talked about, like Rachel Maddow, right? Like everybody here knows who she is. You can picture her in your head. There are probably 400 blonde ladies that are on network television. You can't necessarily tell apart. Rachel Maddow, though, was a weird choice, a truly weird choice. 15, 20 years ago when she was first getting on MSNBC, she didn't look like anybody, but it makes her so much more memorable now. You could spot her in a room. You probably couldn't spot a lot of the other people that are more of a type. And to this point, one of the adventures that I've been on, and in fact I'm still on, is that the book that I decided I wanted to write in the past year is something a little different. I wrote a memoir. And so my literary agent retired last year. And so I needed to find a new agent that would represent that. And I want to write business books in the future. So I wanted somebody that could, possibly do both things. And it was really interesting because as I was sending around this memoir, it didn't really even occur to me that this would be a big challenge because, I have good sales numbers and a good platform. I'm in a much stronger place than I was, years ago when I was first starting out. I have an email list now. I have a structure. And I thought, they're going to like this. Well, the issue is they like it for business books. And people kept looking at the memoir and they're like, this is great. Do you think that you could make it kind of like a memoir that's like a business book? What's the takeaway? Anyway, I'm still working it out. There's ups and downs for all things. I found a fantastic agent. I was very excited about all this, and I signed with him this spring after interviewing, probably a dozen people. I found the perfect agent, and then he died.
Okay, this is a story.
Yeah, we signed the contract, and 10 days later, he was dead. I mean, bad for me, worse for him.
Yes.
But, anyway, I'm still working out where the book is going to land. But yeah, it's a process.
Jen said you have to write the first book. If you plan to write a second book, you already have to plan what that next book is and figure out what are the stepping stones to get to that book.
And to your point, connected to yours, is what's the goal for the next one, and then the next, because there might be a different goal depending on the stage of your business model is at. Stage of their business model, it is ripe for acquisition because of all the hard work that they've done. I was just Brent's on. Who you guys watch QVC or HSN? Anybody? Okay, if you don't, he had a Today's Social Value on Saturday. I have to say this because I'm so grateful you're here. They are on for 24 hours selling their skin wellness products. And I'm like, I can't believe you're standing up and you're here. And so I just want to say, like, part of that is that resilience and understanding the mission. You guys are on a mission to get acquired by the right acquirer that will also maintain your values, because their values are so clear in their branding and positioning. But I just wanted to say that is like, you notice, isn't it smart? Oh, I want to go after Harvard Business Review because that's where all the VC and acquiring and the hedge fund people are reading. They're reading those books written by that press. So they're worried less about the sales numbers overall, more like the right readers. So I love that you're just like connecting the dots on all of it. It's pretty cool. I love it.
Thank you for all of those stories. You guys went hopeful faster than I thought you were going to. I thought you were going to say, and here's the problem, and here are the roadblocks, and here are the issues. But what I hear from all of you is, yeah, there's an ecosystem in place. Yeah, you're going to hear no. We just have to be smarter. We have to think further. And we have to be convicted. And so I think each of you has ideas that really flip and flatten the hierarchy of ideas in one way or another. And I kind of want to go through them because I think those guiding principles are the things that get you through the ecosystem that tells you no. And so I'm going to start with Dorie. Amina's story actually sort of touched on this too. This idea of strategic patience, this idea of you may hear a no many times, but that's not necessarily the answer that you accept. And the hierarchy of ideas you're flipping is everybody tells us faster is better, right? You got to do it fast. You got to produce results. If someone says no, your idea is wrong, there's something wrong with you. So if you could just talk a little bit about that in the context of this process, what that means and how people can embody that strategic patience and how it's going to help them navigate an ecosystem that might not just hand you the kingdom.
Yeah, thank you, Vanessa. So Vanessa is very deliberately using the term strategic patience. This is something that I talk about in my most recent book, The Long Game. And I have appended the adjective to it because the truth is I have an antipathy toward patience. Just like regular patience. So I have so much hostility toward it. I needed to come up with a new term for patience that was acceptable, and that is strategic patience. So the problem with patience is that I think probably many of you guys have experienced this in the business world, typically, and I mean, maybe this is true in our personal lives too, but in the business world, when people say to you, just be patient, that usually means fuck off.
Right. I literally felt that come out. And I was trying to be, elegant.
So, I mean, it's like an excuse that people use against you, right? They weaponize this idea of just like, sit back, little woman, your time to come. And so, of course, it's natural that we would not like that. But what I have discovered over time, and perhaps you have as well, it is true that there are some things where you actually do have to be patient. And it's not that someone's blowing you off, and it's not that you're getting the run around. It's just there are some things that really do take a while. And like, in the natural world, the example is like you're planting crops. And it's like, okay, I want it tomorrow. It is not going to come tomorrow. I need to like let it percolate in the soil or whatever they do. And then, then they will come up. I'm clearly a farmer.
I mean, but don't forget that you need fertilizer too, and that's the poop. Like, God, the poop is part of the process, right?
Yeah, like, exactly. So anyway, all this is to say, strategic patience is my term for those things where it really does take a while. And there are a lot of examples examples where sometimes if we have not done our homework up front, the problem is that we have misapprehensions that we do not recognize about how long things will take. And so we might think, oh, I've tried everything. I've worked every angle. I've been at this a year. It's not working. And actually, it turns out if you sort of had the conversations and done the work, a year is maybe, the starting point, right? Maybe everybody else, it actually takes 5 years. And so scoping is a really big issue here. We have to make sure that we understand the scope of what we're undertaking and what has been common for other people. And I will just, sort of adding in solidarity with Amina, my first experience trying to get a book published, I made it my New Year's resolution in 2009 to get a book published. And so I wrote three different book proposals, in the spring of 2009, because I'm like, one of these is going to work. and I discovered, lo and behold, speaking of blind spots, it's good that you're at an event like this, so you won't have any. It was not really how it worked because, I guess they were decent enough. They were not the worst book proposals, but every single one of them kept getting turned down for the reason that I was not famous enough and I had not built my platform. And so nobody actually cared what the book proposal said. They were like, you can't sell it. And so I needed to go back to the drawing board, which is what I had to do platform building before I was able to then reemerge with a different book proposal that actually did sell.
Okay, I'm going to move to Amina next. The idea that I think you're championing is this perception that ambition or success has to be at the cost of something. You have to give something up in order to. So I wonder if you could talk about that idea too, because there is definitely a sense of, well, if you're ambitious, you have to sacrifice your relationships, your well-being, your health, perhaps.
Yeah.
So I wonder if you could talk a little bit about that.
Yes. Okay. So I wrote a book called The Ambition Trap because I'm a very ambitious person, but that ambition was expensive. It cost me my health. And I developed autoimmune diseases, and my doctor called me one day to be like, hey, you're literally days away from organ failure. You have to get your shit together. And so that was sort of my path to coaching and turning my life around and all the things. And so writing this book was definitely a healing journey for me. And writing this book was really interesting because in my experience, publishing is an ambition trap. Publishing, traditional publishers really ask you to hurt yourself to get to the goal. And so in the book, I talk about how there's two types of ambition. Ambition is neutral and natural, but there's two orientations of it. It can be painful, which is driven by the core wounds, which we all have them: rejection, abandonment, humiliation, betrayal, and injustice. And then the invitation is to pivot into purposeful ambition, which is connected to our truth and our deeper why. But so publishing is an ambition trap. And if you have a betrayal wound, the mask we wear is control, because we wear masks for all these different wounds. So I have a betrayal wound and the mask I wear is control, and publishing is an ambition trap. So literally for 3 years as I'm writing this book, I'm trying to control the crap out of everything and trying to hurt myself to get to the goal, and just watching myself every step of the way being like, you're writing a book that is about doing this differently. Can you every step of the way try to do this differently? And then to add to that, I put a lot of pressure on myself. So I'm Arab, and when I looked at the data, less than 2% of published authors in the US are Middle Eastern, let alone Middle Eastern women. So I was telling myself the story of I have to write a great book because I want to do a second book. So I need to keep the door open. Also, there's only 2% of us in publishing. I have to represent. I can't let my people down,
Mm-hmm.
So all of this pressure that I put on myself, and then was trying to control everything, dot every I, cross every T. But I was tipping into those familiar old patterns. And so for me, writing the book, I think I say to everybody, I'm it's about the book, but it's not about the book, because I think I died 8 times in writing this book, and became 8 different versions of myself that I needed to become to really heal the pain just for writing the book. And so all of this is to say that publishing is an ambition trap, and you really have to be so conscious every step of the way to take care of yourself in the process, because it doesn't want you to. It benefits from you hurting yourself. It benefits from you going above and beyond or breaking yourself down. And so you really have to be super conscious.
Thank you. I feel myself a lot of this words. I bet a lot of you do too. Right, Dr. Brent, another idea that you are flipping on its head is that success doesn't come despite empathy, but maybe because of it or through it. So I wonder if you could talk a little bit more about that, the main ideas of your book, where again, we think it's at the cost of, but maybe not.
Yeah. Well, we say our company was built after a single act of kindness. And we had started our company in 2008 in the midst of the recession. We had bought this vacant farm in upstate New York. and a neighboring farmer was losing his farm, and he had a herd of 100 goats, and he asked if he could bring his goats to our property to graze, otherwise he would have to sell the goats. And we met with him. We could tell how much he loved these animals, and we said, sure, bring them. At the time, we were both living our high life, big careers in New York City, and we thought, this is great. He will come. He can keep an eye on things when we're not at the farm, and we'll come up on the weekends, and there'll be goats to play with. And we say that his act of kindness in writing a letter, not our act of kindness of accepting him on the farm, but his act of kindness writing that letter was why I started our company, because in 2008, when the recession hit, we both lost our big fancy jobs in the city. We had cash in everything we had ever saved up to that point in our career. We were like 30 at the time. Had taken out $1 million mortgage on this property because at that time they were handing out 0% mortgages everywhere. And it was like an oh crap moment, because both of us had grown up in very rural, disadvantaged environments and had made it to New York City. We were going to be corporate people. Like, that was how we had defined the rest of our life. And then it was kind of unceremoniously ripped out from under us. And, from that act of kindness, developed our entire company. It's why we say there are two key ingredients in everything that we make: goat milk and kindness. And the reason we wanted to write this book was because over the past, I would say 10 years, anything that you see on social media about growing a business, one is either there's one hack after another, like you have to do these 5 things or the easy 5 things to do this, or the only measures of success you see are tech billionaires or someone who's had $1 billion exit, or, whatever, they're influencers who make it successful, we don't know. And so we said, you know what, there are other measures of success, and we want to make those measures of success visible. And so when we had this idea for this book on entrepreneurship, we wanted to tell our story of how we started again from nothing, only our own selves as the resource, in this very tiny town of 547 people in the middle of New York State, the most impoverished county in upstate New York. And we grew it. And we grew it neighbor by neighbor by trying to understand who the customer was and what the customer wanted. And we wanted to say, you know what, yes, you can be a tech billionaire and you can have $1 billion exit, but you know what, you can also be really successful with a Main Street business. And you can grow it the old-fashioned way and not have to take investment, to grow your business. You can just do it the old-fashioned way. That's why it's called Goat Wisdom, Greatest of All Time Wisdom, because each chapter we look at different proverbs that have been used for hundreds of years, and we say, oh, if this, make hay while the sun shines. Like, how many times have we all heard that, right? How many times have we applied it to what we're actually doing in life? And we said, if something has been around for so many hundreds of years and passed down as wisdom, why don't we listen to it? And that's the real problem I see in the world. And Jen kind of alluded to it before, is we are bombarded with so much information every single day, but there is a severe lack of wisdom. And if something has been around for hundreds of years and has been tried and true, guess what? It's tried and true. And everything that you need to write your book, start your business, you don't need to go to a fancy business school. Maybe you don't even read a book. You already know it. You just have to listen to it and put it into action. And that's what we hope is the biggest lesson of the book. By the time you finish it, is you're like, yeah, I'm bombarded with information. How do I pick that information that's important? How do I immediately turn it into wisdom?
Thank you. I love the examples of different ways of getting from point A to point B and different point Bs, right? So many times we're comparing ourselves to this fictional ideal. It's got to be like this, or I'm watching this person succeed in this way, or this is the definition of success. And I think also so many times we're comparing ourselves to other people who we think have qualities we should have, and we don't, and somehow that makes us less than. And that's why I think Jen's work is so powerful, because her power is activating who you are and saying who you are is the most powerful person that you can be. So I wonder if you can talk a little bit about this in this process, because I think there is a sort of generalized hierarchical cultural consensus on it's better to be, I'm very introverted, it's better to be extroverted than introverted, it's better to be this than to be that, and you really turn that up on its head.
Yeah. Well, when I present, I was really saying that the idea that I care the most about right now is that people like us become not wisdom keepers, but wisdom sharers. Like we're holding on to wisdom and that we are suffering from a wisdom deficit, as Brent just said. And when we shared all of our personal stories too about the publishing industry, I realized again how it is so hard for people like us to actually get to market with this. A book is like $25. And my experience has been the hardest product I've ever brought to market. And I brought Netflix to market. I brought DoorDash to market. I brought really complex new ideas that have now become like status quo, taken for granted. Like we all kind of have our Netflix subscriptions. That's what I want books to become again, where it's like, why are we taking books for granted? Because books canonize our wisdom. It helps people access our wisdom very easily. People get to meet you in a bookstore without meeting you. I want bookstores to stay alive. Back to like, that should not break. Not everything should be digitized. I don't mind that now there are different ways to enjoy, especially if you're like a multi-hyphenate reader or listener. I remember one of your podcast interviews, Dorie, where you said, I was so excited when your third book, you read it on Audible because her first two books, you weren't the reader, right? Or was it the first one?
The first one, I was not the reader. The second one, I was the reader, but I had a bad cold. So you got
And I remember I listened to it and I thought, I just love her voice. And I hadn't met her yet. I loved, and I could tell because I read her physical book. And then I was listening and I was like, I really feel like Dorie's reading to me right now. And I love that we have that opportunity, but I don't want to eliminate these good smelling like books because these ideas are what we need. And we're living in a generation. I always say I'm a seasoned chicken, not a spring chicken. You guys know I say that, I'm so afraid for my grandchildren, if I have any, and their children or anybody who comes after our steed, they're growing up where they get all their information from a device. They're not getting wisdom as much from this thing. But if we all are more committed to doing some of the things that we said were challenging, because any idea that you want to bring to life requires pressure, tension, and noise. And the question is, are you choosing unhealthy pressure, friction, and noise? Or are you choosing healthy pressure, friction, and noise? Because healthy pressure, friction, and noise is why humans have survived. We can't even come out of the birth canal without pressure, friction, and noise. And so that's how I looked at you use the word natural. It's actually should be more natural, but it looks manufactured because of what the world we're living in. And we were talking earlier today about how I said, if you're resisting sharing your wisdom, the better question in my mind to ask yourself is what? You guys answer it. What am I resenting? So instead of saying, what am I resisting? Anything that I don't want to do, what am I actually resenting?
It prevents you to figuring out the strategy.
Yes, because now you go, actually, I know why I'm resisting. Now I can create a strategy around it because we're humans. We figured out how to survive to get here, right here. All of life is a strategy. Some strategies don't work for us and they should be shifted and adapted. And that's wisdom too that you can share in a book. And that's why I'm obsessed now that I'm even saying no to a lot of big contracts. And it's scary because a corporation will pay me $250,000 to build an entire go-to-market brand infrastructure. It's nice money. Oh, it's so nice. I had to come to Jesus moment, if you will, during the summer when I was recovering from my book launch. And I said, I really want people to have not an easier, but an easeful path to getting their wisdom out there because we are in this deficit. And I don't want, if my son or my grandchildren are using AI to access information, I want to make sure our voices are in it. Like that it's actually pulling from a bigger data set, a bigger wisdom set. And so I'm just using the innovation model inside of my book to actually bring it to life. Even doing the salon, in the book, I tell you, like, how do you pick the next big idea? Well, you go through some of these questions in my framework, and this big idea was worth the pressure, friction, and noise, because that's really the question. Any new idea is going to take it. Is it worth it? And if it's worth it, commit for every 90 to 100 days of time, get more data, learn what doesn't work, give yourself grace when you can't get to the laundry list of the load of the effort yet. And then but you have the direction that you're there. So anyway, that was my long answer to saying that, like, it scared me to think, oh, I'm going to get behind books because I thought it was small. And I'm realizing how actually big it is, and that we're bringing humans back to connecting this way. It's such a deep relationship opportunity to be able to hand your book and talk about concepts, and it opens doors. It's just, and I don't want that to die. So please don't let it die with us, because we need more.
Continue, Jen, on this idea of leadership through ideas and leadership through ideas that can only be your ideas, not someone else's ideas. I've been in a 4-year writing a book proposal, throwing it out, writing another book proposal process. Maybe someone can relate to that. And the voice in my head that kept saying, does anybody care? Does anybody care? Are these ideas important enough to cut down trees and put on paper for books that might just sit on someone's nightstand? And so I really want to talk about this idea of why, and why when ideas get put down on paper and shared in ways that maybe you'll never know, it's important. I came upon this idea a couple of years ago when I was building a business, and I had people who were paying me money for something I was giving them, and it was a very tangible, architectable thing I was building. And then I had a conversation with someone who says, yes, you can be in the world of architecting and building things, or you can live in the world of ideas. The problem with the world of ideas is you don't get the feedback necessarily. You put them out into the world. Yes, you know how many books are being sold, but you don't know exactly who's being impacted and how, and you don't have that feedback loop. But that's where you're going to make the bigs, is in the world of ideas. And so I wonder if you can talk a little bit about your whys and the ideas, if you had any doubt about the ideas, and a little bit about why each of us has an idea that's worth sharing with other people, and how that is a little bit of a leadership process.
Yeah, you're looking at me. Yeah. So that's the thing about apps. That's also what's exciting to me about where we're going with the AI era. I'm very optimistic. I'm actually never the first mover, by the way. Even though I've led so many innovation ideas, I'm never the first to take up a new technology on purpose, because I want to see how it shakes out. Because I like to bet on what I can see and I can feel. And so I think that with ideas, if you really look at yourself as an artist, as a human, like we're all creating our reality. So you're an artist of your own life. You're designing your life. And whether you believe it or not, people who are around you, has anyone in here not gotten a compliment in some kind of way that said, I really like that you're good at that, or wow, the way that you've done that is so impressive, or even if it's like they're remarking on your courage. And I feel like when we start to hoard our ideas because we're afraid that people are going to take it, the truth is that there are other people who have the same ideas as you. That's real. But your personal brand and your desire to be seen, I call it the eagle, not the pigeon. You have to see the landscape below you and fly to the next destination, and understand that the pigeons are actually looking at you to lead. They're looking for you to lead them to the next destination. But you have to trust that. You have to trust that they do see you, even like you don't know every person who's read it, or maybe not every person has given you that Goodreads review that you really asked them to keep doing, and that Amazon review that you're praying, and you create all these incentives to like do that. It's like, I always have to remind myself, I love what Amina talked about with the masks and whatnot. I have to remind myself that my ego and my contribution don't have to be married for us to coexist. I can still be ambitious and definitely feel butthurt that I didn't get these things I wanted. And I can honor that I'm an artist who, if one person reads it, and I love that Dr. Brent talked about, the guy's name is Farmer John, you guys. His name is Farmer John. Who can like make up this story, right? That Farmer John, that moment, that manifest, I like the word manifest action, not manifestation. Like that moment of saying yes because an idea sparks and you move forward step by step, strategically, patient about it. Like your ideas need breath too. They need to live outside of you, because inside of you, they're not even, and I'm going to say this, please don't be hurt, but they're not really even ideas yet. I think like if you're by yourself in just your ideal lab, you become a mad scientist, right? You're kind of loony, right? If you're just in your own laboratory and you're just making things, but no one ever got to experience them, you probably would literally go mad. And that's why people need to experience them. You have to be okay with, and this is what social media does to you. You're so afraid somebody's going to say you suck or ignore you, and I'm like, unfortunately, that is the world we live in. So what if we embodied the wisdom of kindness, the wisdom of patience, even though we hate it, the wisdom of like the gift in those things? So I would just say that like, I think we have a responsibility. I say like this meat sack that holds our soul has an expiration date every day. And Dr. Brent is literally like a physician who studies aging. Okay. And he worked in geriatric medicine. So we are the next, and we don't know if we have tomorrow. So don't be a keeper of your wisdom. If that doesn't motivate you, and I'm not trying to motivate you, it doesn't motivate you. Like my ideas are cool. Somebody needs this. Not like based on our feedback, but based on your like, I know people need this. And you have to put in the proper healthy PFN, pressure, friction, and noise that it takes to get there.
Mhm.
That's it. And you're gonna get said no a lot, but the yeses, which I love what happened with Amina, like the right yes is gonna show up. I mean, I hope that the next agent survives past a week, 2 weeks. Like, but the right one's on the way. That's the whole thing. If you believe, do you guys all believe that your stuff is thebomb.com?
Yes.
Like, yeah, right? So let's bring it. That's my answer. Sorry, long-winded.
I gotta go to, if we're talking about the canon and we're talking about ideas and we're talking about our ideas going out into the world and being important in the dialogue, we got to talk about AI because it's here and it's here to stay and it's only accelerating in its importance. And so how do we navigate when we're thinking about the importance of ideas in shaping culture and the way that ideas are being amalgamated, synthesized, and how to make sure that not only the dominant narratives are being amalgamated and synthesized, but that each individual idea has space to breathe. You think about, do any of you think about AI a lot?
Who doesn't?
Right. Silly question. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I certainly do. For anyone who's interested, I actually just was listening to a great podcast that I think is quite helpful, and I will open it up right here just to get the citation for you. It was, it came out on September 14th on it's called Lenny's podcast. This guy's name is Lenny Rachitsky. He's does a lot of like tech stuff, and the topic of it is so-called AEO. So it's the newfangled term answer engine optimization. So it's kind of the AI era version of search engine optimization, and it was a very smart and thoughtful discussion. And the TLDR is that AEO, it has some differences, but it's actually not that different from traditional search engine optimization. A lot of people want to make you worry that it's very different because then they can sell you consulting services around it. And, there's things to be mindful of. I mean, for instance, one thing, if you choose to opt in, that you want to be kind of playing the game in the AI world, you want to, like at a basic level, make sure that your website is not blocking search bots. That would kind of cut you off. And so if you would like to be included in these answers, you need to make sure something like that is done. But a lot of it, really is kind of basics about creating great content. There are interesting things to think about. YouTube is actually becoming incredibly important, largely because YouTube is still the second largest search engine, and it is not uncommon for there to be videos. So answer engines, ChatGPT, etc., really like structured questions. What is the best blah, 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 or how do I blah, blah, blah. And you can make videos with exactly this and, have the text and whatever. And so that becomes searchable. That helps get you in the mix. But anyway, that's some tactical information that I hope is useful. But of course, there's the larger philosophical debate, which I'm sure all of you have ideas and thoughts about. For me, I am trying not to worry about it too much because you can certainly drive yourself crazy if you do, AI stole this or copied that. Ultimately, I think it is a fact of life that we are going to have to adjust to in terms of thought leadership. And so I think we have to kind of go back to first principles, which is you want to be in the mix and you want to have your ideas out there. And now that these answer engines have direct links, you want to be a person that is being recommended and suggested and linked to. So we need to be mindful about continuing to put great discoverable content out there. That is sort of how I think about it.
Yeah, I think with AI, it's not that much different than what has happened in the history of academics. First there were people who had access to libraries. And if you were a well-read person, you read a lot of books and your brain was a large language model. And you developed your wisdom based on the information you had available to you. Then the internet came along and you could search reams and reams of information. You still had to convert it to wisdom in order to make your idea unique. And the same thing happens with AI. It's just more and more information. The uniqueness comes from how your particular lens interprets that information, prompts that information, and converts it into the wisdom that is uniquely yours to tell. And so I'm not scared of it as long as you have the belief in yourself that you can be the storyteller. It's just a tool. And I think that's one of the really key things that everybody in this room, I presume everyone is wants to write a book in this room. Is that the goal? I think that the thing for you to remember, as Jen was touching on, there are really no new ideas. All ideas have been told in one form or another. That was kind of what we talked about in Goat Wisdom. Like, these things have been in the ether for a long time. And people have heard them for a long time, but they have not heard them from you. And people are waiting for their storyteller to communicate it in a way that they can hear and receive the message. And I think that's how you have to look at yourself, as that storyteller, and who you want to reach. And I think if your goal is to be a Mel Robbins or a Sandra Bloom or whoever else is topping the charts right now, there is, and Jen can attest to this from her recent experience, there is a formula that you have to follow to make it onto those lists. And sometimes you have to say, okay, even if my wisdom is complex and it's hard for me to communicate, how do I dumb it down? Because, like, if you look at Mel Robbins, and I think it's a very good book, but we have heard that turn the other cheek or don't care what other people say, right? We all know that. But the words "let them," right? It was so easy for people. There's nothing revolutionary about that. She just told it in a way that not dumbed it down, but made it easy for people to understand, easy for people to read, easy for people to latch onto. So if your goal is to do that type of book, you have to think of those things. How do I make it relatable to so many people? How do I make it repeatable to so many people? How do I take a concept and dumb it down for the average person?
Pigeons.
Pigeons.
You gotta write
Yes,
the
that's right.
pigeons.
You got to write in the pigeons.
Yes.
You said that.
Yes.
But if that's your goal, that may not be your goal to do that. But
Your goal might be writing for the VCs.
Correct.
Yes.
Correct. Find that target audience and then strategize to go after that target audience. And if that big list is your target audience, dumb it down, right for the pigeons.
Yes.
I don't have much to add to that, but I will say when I'm working with my clients, I believe that we differentiate in the how, the what, or the who. So if we're telling a story in a way that's never been told before, if we're combining methodologies in a way that they haven't been combined, and who we are. A friend of mine who works in VC, and she's a CHRO of a venture fund, and she just did an executive coaching certification. So she was kind of picking my brain, and she was like, I'm terrified of AI because like there's all these AI coaches now. And I was like, oh my God, can we play a fun game? Can you show me this coach? Like, let's give it a prompt. And so shared her screen. She tells me, she shares this prompt of like, she was in this meeting and she felt unseen. And like, I watched the AI coach her through it. And it was really interesting to me, right? It was very formulaic. It went completely tactical. And as a human coach, I would have first looked at shadow, then I would have gone to tactics. And so I'm like, okay, I see where I fit into this. And so the part that I'm most intrigued by with AI is like, if you take off these more tactical pieces, these more formulaic pieces, what's the level of wisdom that I can access? Like, what's my next level of thought leadership? Like, I'm super excited about that part of like, what's untapped. That to me just feels like endless possibility.
I'll just add that I want, in my mind, instead of looking at AI as replacing anyone, it's really a part of your team. AI's job is to fill the gaps where you're resenting, right? How can you operationalize things through AI, right? Instead of replacing your wisdom with AI. Mm-hmm. And even if you separated that church and state, I think that cleans it up a little bit more about like, how do you use AI to actually get your message out there? Clean your internal operations a bit with some of these AI ideas. Even this AEO idea, that's basically, it's probably not the right the terminology, but it's like a plugin now to your YouTube videos, like to make sure that your YouTube videos, which has your persona and you showing up and then pulling out the right pieces quicker to then be able to redistribute onto the interwebs and make you still show up on the search bar. But notice now you're treating that tactic as part of your team, not as a replacement for your voice and your uniqueness. I think that if we started doing that and thought of it that way, I don't fear it because that's how if I'm using, and I'm an optimist because I'm using AI like that. Mm. And one more thing is just like, I've been in Silicon Valley since 1996. And Tony Hsieh used to be my incubator mate, like in the startup world. And before he even had Zappos, and he and Jeff Bezos. And we used to talk all the time about our big ideas. And I've seen 4 technological breakthroughs. Right? It's just like ancient wisdom is ancient wisdom and technology is new, actually. This is only the 4th wave, right? And then there was a bust. People are also talking about there's going to be a bust. They're right. There is going to be a bust. So that's why don't put all your eggs in the AI basket. Actually, bet on you. Bet on the farm. right? Like be the farmer, like do the tilling, the cultivating, the fertilizing, right? And you're going to stand out when actually everybody's put their money into AI only and the consolidations happen because we talk about AI's commodity. I've interviewed, I was sharing this 250 founders in the Bay Area in the past 3 months. And they said there's 3 things they need to rise to the top because they're all on a race. I don't want to be on a race with them. That's not the business I'm in. See, that's the thing. You're not in the business that they are. So stop making you are. You're not competing with them. They're in the business of winning the AI war. And you have to think like a strategist, not like a consumer, right? It's like, oh, good. I'm glad y'all are duking it out over there, sword fishing, sword fighting, and all that stuff. They said, number 1, they're in a war for talent. Starting salary in the Bay Area for an AI coder is $1 million starting. Again, we're all in the wrong business, maybe. I don't know. But we also know that's going to cap out, but that's the minimum. They are all fighting for talent. But we can't compete there and we shouldn't because it's not our business. Number 2, they know that the branded AI will win. So they're trying to brand their AI similar to, they've thought it through as strategists. We need to make sure that we build the new AI brand name to the AI coffee bean, like Starbucks to coffee bean. They need like the AI name to the AI tool. So they're all fighting over that. That's where I can make a lot. People like me, people like us, like to be like, oh. And then the third thing is the personal brand of their leaders, because the tech founders are very ill-equipped with people skills. They're smart, they're geniuses, they're coders. There's definitely an oligarchy when it comes to tech, the tech world. But see, we're not all in the tech business. How many of you are in like building AI engines right here? Any of you? Well, besides May, because May is. And I'm so glad because she doesn't look like the other AI guys, and that's what makes her look different. But my point is that most of us are not doing that. So instead of like worrying about the noise, ask, what are the AI tools that I can do to operate my business and be part of my team? They work for me. AI works for me. I don't work for AI. So that's the perspective I hope that you take away from.
It reminds me of a proverb that we talk about in our book. A good workman never blames his tools, but a bad one always does. And as you say, AI is the tool.
Yes.
And if you are blaming the tool, then that is covering up for something else that's going on in your process, a resentment or whatever.
They have no strategy.
Blaming the tool.
Right.
I think we're at the end of time, but I cannot resist in a couple of moments very quickly doing a lightning round that's completely unplanned.
Oh, fun.
Which is just, what is the best piece of advice you've gotten about your life, your work, publishing? It can be a little bit broad because I'm springing it on you, but just a couple of nuggets that maybe might change someone's perspective in a short amount of time.
I'll go first. Mine is this. I don't actually believe that there is a such thing as any business problems. No one has a business problem. We only have personal stuff that we're not working on, and we're working on it through acting on it instead of just thinking or feeling it. And so for me, whenever I go, do I have a business problem? Actually, there's infinite knowledge and wisdom to access, right? To solve that business problem. But do I have a strategy for me that integrates using my personal problem? So if you don't have a business problem, you have a personal challenge that you want to get comfortable with. I think we call it the shadow, right? So that you want to just meet your shadow and know that that's really what's not the business problem. That was the best piece of advice I ever got from a coach.
That's great. I just want to take this moment to go back to something that Jen said at the outset, which was, it's very kind. Thank you that she recommends my book, but there's not a lot of books by women that she's recommending about business topics. And so I'm sure many of you here are working on all different kinds of books and all different kinds of genres. But I will say, if you are in the business space, one of the things that I want to encourage, there are some of you here that probably, because it is your calling, and if it is, Godspeed, I'm excited for you, are doing things to help other women, and that is great. However, I think that there is often a larger group of people that want to do a thing and want to talk about a thing, and because of sexism, either real or perceived, and then it is easier maybe to speak to a female audience, they sometimes get funnel themselves into, I'm going to do this for women.
So good.
And the problem, and I have heard this from conference organizers that will come to me and say like, oh, well, we're looking for women speakers or things like that. And I've actually had people say this. They say it's hard because it's a co-ed conference. And so many of the women who write books for women. And so I can't really bring them on the stage because then that will be weird for the men in the audience. And so I want all of us to just, again, if it is your thing and your calling, by all means do it. But for other people, I don't want us to self-segregate our message because even if mostly women are drawn to it, amazing. But if we write for a full audience, we're at least giving everyone the opportunity to hear our message. And I think that's part of the challenge sometimes in terms of how we get pigeonholed in the world.
And I would say for me, and I learned this on the other side of entrepreneurship, is go into your entrepreneurial journey, and writing a book is an entrepreneurial journey, knowing what your personal metric of success is going to be, not what someone else defines as success for whatever project you're working on. Because just like Jen was alluding to, she could have monetary success doing lots of other things. But her metric of success is having that great best-selling book that is, moving people in a massive way. That's not the same. That doesn't mean you have to have that metric of success, or you have to have the metric of success. Because even though that's a great personal goal to have, if that's not your personal goal, you could get that and still not be happy. And at the end of life, the goal we should all be reaching for is contentment. So go into it thinking, what do I need to feel successful here and be content? And then the other side of that is don't keep moving the goalpost. Like once you get there, don't say, oh, but I could do this. No, be content with what you achieved and reflect on what you achieved. You don't have to go on to a second act or a third act or whatever, Oprah tells us we need to do. We need to just accomplish what we set out to accomplish and be so grateful that we accomplished it.
I love it, and I feel like it's a perfect setup for our book because there's a whole section. There's a whole section on contentment, and people are like, "How do ambition and contentment sit side by side?" Well, contentment's about unconditional wholeness and the knowledge of enough from the inside, and to know that is so important. But the piece that I want to leave you with is that we cannot be like, don't be so consumed by competition. Be captivated by purpose. So much of the time we're looking around, what's everybody else doing? How, like, they're defining success this way. How am I going to win against this person? Be dedicated to your divine purpose, because that will always show you the way. That's the deeper why underneath everything. It's going to help you get up day after day, especially the hard days.
Thank you so much.
What about you though, Vanessa? Can we ask you what's something?
I knew this was going to happen.
What's one piece of advice that you learned?
It's advice that you can take or you can leave, because it's a little different than what most people will say. I do none of my work with an intention of impact. I do all of my work only with an intention of self-expression. And I trust that who I am at my core, if I can get to that and I express it, will have the impact it needs to have. So I don't do it to help people. I love the idea of helping people, but that is not why I do it, because I don't think that I can anticipate or forecast impact, because I'm still in the work of trying to figure out who I am. And that's my work. And I will do it with dedication, and I just trust that that's going to translate into what it needs to be in the world. I just want to thank all of you. I learned so much. Thank you for being such an incredibly kind audience, and thank you, Jen, for inviting me into this room.
Thank you.